Well, thank you, Board of Education, for allowing me to have this opportunity not only to continue to work with you and for these fine residents of Elyria, where we spend so much of our lives, and the preparation that goes into a project such as what we're going to talk about for the next several minutes just can't be overstated in terms of the amount of excitement that it generates, the amount of interest that it generates, and the amount of work that goes into doing what it is that we're all about. I want to begin just ordinarily, you don't even talk about the title page of a presentation, but I think we should in this case, because I haven't heard much, but I've heard a little bit about a lot of discussion about the sports complex and when are we going to discuss about the schools. And we have to keep in mind that this is two different areas that we're getting into. It's divided into the LFI, that's the sports complex, and that is not part of the co-funded. So I included PD up here in the corner to say we certainly have the spirit of PD with us in our schools and the sports complex, and that the sports complex is a part of the master plan, but it is just that, it's just a part. And the fact that it's a local funded initiative means that the state will have no part in any of the construction, so the board has more leeway and is at liberty to make more decisions directly because it's not a partnership at this point with the state. The sports complex is not connected to any of the buildings, therefore the state won't be getting involved with the construction of the stadium. When we talk about the sports complex initially, and I'll be showing some timelines on how involved it is to deal with the schools, I want all of the public to understand that we passed the bond issue so that we can have new schools for kids and teachers and parents, that we're very proud of Elyria High School, but that it does take time. I included the E because at the high school we have the Scholastic E. I know in the middle schools they've gone to a Scholastic E, and the education is number one, and our sports and our ability, and I have always been so proud of this board that no matter how tough it gets financially, they don't use economics to come into play so that our students can participate in all of the co-curriculars regardless of how well their family is doing or not able to do in this changing economy. So the master plan update, we'll talk about 3 months. And then the future. We've been now only 3 months since the bond issue passed. For those of us working with it, it seems so much longer than that because there's been so much time and energy that's gone into the project. And I'm sure as you're going about your business and you're out in public, you're getting this question. Come on, what's taking so long? We should have seen a school or two by now. It doesn't work that way. Let's be reminded that although very well intended, great spirit and lots of money coming from the state, it doesn't come without its strings and it doesn't come without its processes. And it's not a negative. It's actually a positive. They have been doing this since the late 1990s, and they came up with a formula that helps us do it right, do it well, so that our schools last. We can't be doing this every few decades. We have schools that last 60, 70, 80 years, and a couple of them that have been over 100 years old. So it's a process that takes time. I thought maybe we should talk about, as soon as the bond issue passed, the votes had to be tabulated and confirmed by the Board of Elections. Now, we had that preliminary that night, and it was such a great victory that it wasn't close, that there wasn't any need for a recount, but it did have to be verified, and that did take time, and that's an official action. At that point, the Ohio Facility Commission, the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, and this has been a little bit confusing to some of the folks. I have a lot of terms tonight, and I'll try to keep it brief yet explain. OFCC is an umbrella organization in Ohio where there used to be two separate divisions, one that built bridges and roads and state buildings and one that built schools. The Ohio Schools Facility Commission has been blended with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. So we use both terms back and forth. So the OFCC is the one really that we're working with and that we're complying with. We had to submit to them almost a year ago that we were interested in pursuing the bond issue, and they've stayed with us, and they gave us kind of a pre-approval. But they couldn't really approve you until the bond issue passed, which was less than 3 months ago, or just about 3 months ago, but less for them because they didn't get the official verification until probably in December. So they're moving as quick as they can, but it is not at a fast pace, but at an important pace to them. A superintendent and treasurer are heavily involved, mostly the treasurer at this point, working with bond counsel and the broker to buy and sell the bonds. You had a meeting, I think we were at Northwood that night, and you heard from Mr. Bacco, and he's working with the school district, working with the treasurer. The bond money will come in 2 chunks. There's an initial to get you going so that you can work on the sports complex, because that's, again, easier for you to start right away because you control 100% of that and you don't have to go through a lot of the other regulations. You're going to get the rest at the later sale. I know that you just talked to Moody, and that's another, people could see that as a delay, but it's necessary. You're going to be rated. You want your rating to be high. From what I understand, that meeting went very well, and that affects your bond rating, how much debt you have. You can look at that as the equivalent of maybe going to the bank and you want a business loan, and they're going to look into what's the likelihood of you making good on that loan. And from what I understand, that meeting went very well with Moody, and your rating should be very, very good, which would make your bonds very, very desirable to buy. For those listening that want to be part of this grand event and say, can I buy a bond? Yes, you can. They'll be for sale unless something has changed. I'll look at the treasurer for about $5,000 per bond. And you'll let folks know when they can do that, I suppose, whether or not they're citizens that have come here tonight or our own employees, they're eligible to buy those bonds.
Right, and if they would just contact me, I'll give them the... Okay,
so I guess the message there is contact the treasurer if you're interested in buying a bond or a lot of bonds. I don't think a lot of people know that. And people asked me later, after the high school was built, could I have bought any bonds? And we said yes. I guess we never thought to mention that we think of corporations, companies, and brokers buying all these bonds, and of course they buy them in slews, but you can buy individual bond, and they are $5,000. The architect needs to be hired. That may be also confusing to our public because they see the architect report to the board from time to time, and they saw that you hired an architect, but that was for the sports complex, separate from the state. So I have to reiterate that it is something that you can do more quickly. However, it's moving at a pace that the state set forth. The good news is we have the interview for the 3 finalists, the architectural firms, on Friday afternoon. And short of something going wrong at that point, we should have an architect. AVG is one of the 3, but the process is very exact, and they need to present their case and apply just as the other 2. There were 6 altogether. They were vetted down to 3. One of them dropped out, got another job with another school district, didn't feel they could handle that district and our district, so we were delayed a week while they took an architectural firm that came in the 4th place and moved them up into 3rd, and they'll be involved with the interviews on Friday. The construction company then needs to be hired. We just now received the applications. The state had put that out for bid. They just came in this week within the last couple of days, and they will be vetted as well. This takes quite a lot of time for the committee to take a look at them and for the state to take a look at them. A typical application is 50 to 70 pages. and you get half a dozen of them. So you're there doing a lot of reading, a lot of marking, and taking a lot of notes. They've got a rubric by which the architects and the construction companies are scored. You follow the rubric. Each question is worth a minimum number of points, a maximum number of points that add up to 100. They go strictly on the score. They take the top 3 scores, and that's who gets the 3 interviews, and then hiring is done from there unless some other problem comes up. The interviews are tentatively scheduled for March 27th for the construction company. The construction firm interviews will include whatever architect is chosen. The architect will assist in the selection of the construction company, but there are no additional outsiders that are involved. It's the school district and the state in the selection of the architect. I think I've explained this. Is the process the same? No. You're much more independent in your work with the stadium or the sports complex. It's LFI rather than keep calling it a locally funded initiative. What that means is it's 100% locally funded. It was in the bond issue, but the state did not partner with you on that. They do not do that for any district. I should probably add, they don't do auditoriums, they don't buy land, they don't pay for attorneys, and they don't do stadiums. They also have a system whereby they pick products and materials to be used in the school, which you can upgrade. And when you upgrade them, which you've done, then they do participate with you with those LFIs because they're an integral part of the school that you're partnering with them with. And the best example of that is more space, the preschool space that you've added, and the concrete and cement walkways that are high polished for high traffic areas rather than go with the vinyl so that they'll last for decades. On those LFIs, the state does participate with you because, like I said, it's integral to the building. There's pre and post bond work that's already done with the stadium because you were able to roll on that early. And as a result, there is a diagram that I'll show you in the next slide. The major work regarding the design of the stadium is nearly complete. We can't have it totally completed because in order to get the permits to do what we need to do, we have to go through a number of governmental, both federal, state, and local entities to get there okay. And it's not a simple process, but it's the light's at the end of the tunnel, and I expect that we'll have that wrapped up within the next week or so. I fully expect that Phase 1, which is the southern portion of the stadium, for most people listening to me tonight, they do not realize northern part or southern part. Easiest way is what you know right now is the stadium is the northern part, and that's going to be Phase 2. The stadium stays where it is while the sports complex is being built, with the new football and soccer stadium and track being directly to the south of that, or going away from that for those of you that are challenged with directionality. As you go away from the stadium, that's going south. And so you might say that there's a lot of trees there right now, and of course that's part of what had to be done because we want to do the right things environmentally as well, and we're working very closely with the entities and agencies. The Phase 1 is scheduled, and we are on schedule, ready for use by August 2018. So next school year, not this one coming, but the following year, by the 2018-19 school year, we should be into the sports complex at the southern end. And then Phase 2, which is the northern end, which would be to tear down what we see there today, except for the baseball fields. And that's when the softball would come over along with some additional tennis and parking. This is the latest diagram showing the stadium complex. This is the southern part that I was talking about. This is Phase 1. This is Phase 2. In order to complete Phase 2, as we'll all recall, this is approximately a $13.3 million venture, of which we put in the bond issue 9.2. There was a lot of discussion that the public will have to pay for the majority, probably about 3/4 of the new sports complex, but the last quarter would be donated money raised by corporations, individuals, through a series of fundraisers, and that is still yet to be determined how that money will come in. There are a number of people who are interested in this, and we'll pursue that. That will have to be resolved probably within the next half year. This is where you'll see activity as early as next month. And for those that were looking for shovels in the ground and bulldozers and making some noise and stirring some dust, we should be doing it in here next month. This blue area is considered wetland. A lot of this is considered wetland, actually, under very technical terms, but we have found a way to mitigate this with the federal EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers. Ohio EPA is very good with our project, but the federal entities were a little more stringent on allowing us to do exactly what we wanted over all of the property. But through negotiations and back and forth over the last several months, beginning last June, actually, before you passed the bond issue, but heavy discussion since November, this area here, I know it looks like a lake. And so if you've ever been out there, you're going to wonder, well, when did that show up? That just means it's wetland. And it seemed like water's blue, so it's blue. So don't be fooled by that. That's mostly standing trees is what folks will see there. And that will remain as we build the entire complex as part of the agreement with the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers. We are just now getting to the point where we should be seeing those permits come in, I hope, just about any time. Here's the stadium that will be turf. There's the practice fields. This is soccer over here, football over here. Band is intermixed here as that's going to be worked out with the school. Very important. Everybody performs here, but nobody practices here. That will be your $800,000 to $900,000 by the end of the day, probably artificial turf field. That'll be wide enough and long enough to play soccer, which you don't have now. You'll see a new track there that you'll be able to do state activities. Right now, you need a 6-lane track, and you have a 5-lane track for most of the time, but then when you make the turn, you're in a 5-lane track, and you can't have them leave their lanes. So you'll have a regulation track, you'll have a regulation field for soccer, you'll have your football field. It'll be in place. You can see the tennis courts up here border Phase 1 and Phase 2. So in all probability, to build the Phase 1, the tennis courts will more than likely have to be involved in Phase 1. So I think here's kind of an imaginary line, if you can picture this, on where the construction will stop. It'll start here, it'll end here, and we'll be coming in off of Oberlin Road.
Mr. Rigda, just
yes.
Going back to that.
Sure.
Just for big picture, is it fair to say that approximately the entire Phase 1 part is all the wooded area right now?
Yes.
Just so, okay.
Predominantly.
Okay.
Very little of it, that parking area where it got a little difficult and muddy to the south of the stadium, but for the most part, it's all woods.
So the space that you see now, realistically, is double
Right.
once we take the trees down?
That's correct.
Okay.
Virtually double, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Good point. Okay, the schools. The new schools, site locations, just a reminder, because it's been a while since we've talked about it, and every now and then I still get some questions. What grades are going to be at Ely? What grades are going to be at Hamilton? How does that work? Now, I am calling these Hamilton site. We do not know, and that's something for you to be working on soon. What will that school be called? What will any of these schools be called? Has to be determined soon, and I'm sure that you'll speak with each other and the community and get input. I know Dr. Jama and I have been talking about that, and he's had some ideas about how to keep people involved as we move forward. And it may not sound like an important thing, but it would be to some that what are we going to call these places? So please keep in mind, even though I had to refer to them somehow with a name, I'm calling them sites so that you can relate to what's there now. So when I call it the Hamilton site, that does not mean it's going to be called Hamilton School. I have no idea what the school is going to be called. The important part is it's that site, and that'll be a K-4 school. The other K-4 school is the Ely site, right next to the school, to the north. And for those, again, that north and south business, going towards Northwood as you're looking at the current Ely is where Ely will initially be built. The Abbey Road Soccer Field Spring Valley site, which will be the pre-K all the way through 8 complex, which will be divided into 3 separate entities connected together as a single complex to save you money in infrastructure. So the heating systems, water systems, electrical systems, sound systems, and drainage, all of that will come under one roof, so to speak, but the entities will operate separately. There'll be different doors, separate doors for preschool, separate door for elementary, separate door for the middle school. You have the same thing at Eastern Heights. You have the same thing at the township in terms of the complexes, only these two have 2 sections where this would have 3 sections. To the best of my knowledge, and I know people have been wanting to know this, and this still must be fluid and flexible because the architect who's helped us all this time and has put the work in to get us to where I can give you this report right now is interviewing on Friday. So depending on how all that goes, depends on how all this ultimately may look. But as of today, this is the plan, that the preliminary timelines for the schools to have the least amount of disruption and make the most sense in the utilization of the properties that you have already owned would be in the order that I'll be showing you right now. All of this will run concurrently with the sports complex construction. So it's not like we're going to do this and then do that. All of the construction will be concurrent. It's going to begin like you see on this page, and what I've already described to you. Next month, they're going to be working on the stadium. Then we're going to go into the Abbey Road site and the Ely site, and then we'll go through those dates, and then we'll show how the rest of them will roll out as we see it today. The farther you get away from today, the less accurate this is probably going to be because there's an expression about what happens. And after we built the high school, we know a lot of that could happen in a short period of time. Dig a hole and find out what's underground, and nobody knew it was there. But barring any of that, this is your best scenario as to what we can expect. After all of that work is done, that we've done preliminarily, Spring Valley will be one of the first, and the Middle Avenue will be the other, Hamilton, for early demo. The Spring Valley abatement and demolition will occur this summer, approximately August. It could be as early as July, and go through December of 2017. You need to get that school out of your way so that you can build this school on the Abbey Road site. And that you
Excuse
can do
me, Paul. Mr. Rigda, is it anticipated that there would be entrances on, I believe, is that Rosalie?
There would be entrance on Rosalie for some of your back fields, like your football, and some of those areas for practice. But the schools are designed at this point, and they're not designed. Let me just say that. They're scheduled, they're sketched at best, with no renderings available at all, to all enter from different points on Abbey Road.
Okay.
But there will be Rosalie entrance because the middle school has to have fields, and that would be behind, that would be on the other side of that creek that runs through there, and there would be entrances, of course, then from that way to avoid congestion. Whether or not that changes or not, but this is what we know today without an official architect.
Okay.
So as soon as we get an architect on board, all of that can be more specified. The program of requirements is very important, especially for the staff that's behind me. The high school, I don't know if we have high school staff behind me or not listening, or they'll watch this down the road, but the high school remembers that there were extensive interviews that happened between the architect and the people that work in the building, and the people who are going to use the building, the community, the teachers, the support staff, the administration. It was no accident that there are 3 different offices in Elyria High School, that there isn't one central office. The principals, assistant principals, secretaries, and counselors all are in one place. The staff wanted it to be distributed throughout the school. The technologies will have discussion. How the school is going to be used will determine how the school is going to be built. They'll all be under Ohio Facility Commission rules and regulations and standards, but each one of those program of requirements, and we call them PORs, will happen with the staff that's going to be attending the new school. And when we're going from 7 schools to 5 schools, there'll be staff in schools now that will be in different schools later in a different location, and that's going to be incumbent on the HR department to work with curriculum department and superintendent's office to decide who those individuals are, what grade levels those are, so that those meetings can be held. To do the program of requirements for Elyria High School is a piece of cake because there's only one high school. So you talk to the people that work at this high school that are going to work at that high school, and you got it made. This is a little bit different because there's going to be a little bit of shifting, and it's important that anybody, if possible, if we know, is going to work in the new school, that they be involved in the program of requirements. Schematics phase and the program of requirements is going to run March through July of this year for both Abbey, Road Site, and Ely. So the staff can be prepared to have not only the conversations, but to react. Now, what are schematics? Schematics are the drawings that are like drafts. So the architect listens, goes back and draws, and then comes back and says, is this what you mean? Kind of like buying a house that's built from scratch where they're actually building it customized. Not one of the, you can buy one of these 5 models. They don't come in like that. They're not going to come in and say, here's your school, you have to figure out how you're going to use it. They're going to say, how you're going to use it. They're going to leave, come back and say, is this what you meant? You can bring the community in, talk about how they would like to see it utilized, where they would like to meet, how comfortable they feel working with the schematics that they're seeing, and then ultimately those schematics go to a design phase. The design phase is like any other contractor like entity that you might talk to. Once they draw those, they don't want to change those unless there's a reason to change those, because a lot of time and effort goes into that. They're very specific, and they build from that. They're essentially the blueprints, and that's called the design phase. They'll be doing that April 2018 through August 2019. The tentative opening dates, start of the school year, is the 2019-20 school year for both the Abbey Road site and the Ely site. The Ely site's going to have a little bit of work left on the property, but not the school. It might be a little noisy and dusty for about 3 months, where they tear down the rest of Ely that didn't get torn down over the summer, and they have to put the playground and some additional parking in there while the kids and the teachers and the support staff are in session. Moving along, Eastern Heights site is going to be planned. POR and schematic is all going to happen at the same time, April through August of 2018. And the design for both phases is going to happen at the same time, September 2018 through April 2019. But the school itself will be built in 2 parts because they have to build one part, which will be the 5-8 portion, the elementary, so to speak, portion of this complex, tear down the junior high school to build the elementary school. So the construction phase of 5 through 8, May 2019 through August 2020, opening 2020-2021 school year, this phase. Then following that, the following year to the construction phase, June 20th through summer of 2021, ready for opening 2021-2022. The demolition of the current Eastern Heights is phased into it as they're ready for the middle school to move over. So it's right in the middle. You're going to see that Spring Valley comes down early in total. This is going to not come down because there's students in there while their school is being built right next to where they are. They'll move into the middle school. The middle school will get torn down. Because of all the electrical, the water, the gas, and all of the services are going into the site, it won't take but a year to finish the kindergarten through 4th grade part of that. That's why it can move so quickly. All the infrastructure will be there except for the part that's actually going to be brick and mortar. It's the attachments, and that's what takes all the time. All that stuff that's underground that you can't see, that'll all be in there. So that's what that's saying. Moving along, Hamilton School will be demolished this year in the fall and the winter. The POR for the folks that are going to work in there in the schematic phase is scheduled for this winter through March of next year. The design phase, after schematics are accepted, April 2018 through December 2018, and the construction phase will go on from January 2019 through August 2020, and the school on that site scheduled for opening the 2020-21 school year.
Paul, question.
Yeah, want me to go back?
Based on that schedule, why is the demo occurring on the Hamlin School building so quickly?
They want to get that down, and they want to do whatever they have to do on the land to make sure that any of the permits and whatnot is cleared. We've seen how long some of that can take, and they're trying to avoid delays. That's what's been explained.
Okay.
Okay. The township complex, POR and schematic, August through December of next year. The design phase, the beginning of the following year, January 29 through August. The construction phase will go September 29 through probably late spring, early summer, but I've seen on their chart that they show August. And it should be ready for opening on the 21-22 school year. The Board of Education will be moved from the current site where we are here now tonight to Westwood in 2021. Upon the near completion of the township complex construction, we have to be sure that Westwood is vacated before the board office can move in there. And that's why this has to be flexible depending on when this is done. And these are the buildings and the properties that you'll be able to sell after, probably not the administration center because you're going to be using the complex, and I'm not sure. You need to have a discussion about Crestwood because this is all in one very large complex on how you want to deal with that, whether or not that can be sold or used for anything else, these two. But certainly these are properties that should have value to the district, and their demolition will occur and not necessarily in this order. I just put them in an order that seemed to make sense here. They may even be alphabetical, I think. Late 21 through midsummer of 2022.
And question, on the demolition of those buildings, tearing those buildings down and turning it into green space, that is included in the state's cost also,
That's correct?
correct?
Yeah, we'll pay 67% of that, right?
So they're going to pay 67% of tearing those down or
That's
turning it
correct.
into green space? Okay.
And if you were to sell any of these properties to someone who might be interested in them before you tore it down, that would help you with any overages that might occur later, because the money that you've put into your plan to abate and demolish those buildings would still be there, and you could then utilize that to either enhance something or offset some unforeseen expense. But
So you're saying,
exactly right. They'll pay 2/3 of it.
you're saying that if we don't tear one of them down, we sell it, we still get that money?
You don't get it from the state, but you'll have your portion of it that's already been in the bond issue. The bonds will have been sold and you'll have the money. You'll have options like you had with the high school. You could renegotiate the bond, take a year off of it, depending on, I doubt if it's going to be that much. Usually, I know that sounds like a lot of money. To me, it's a lot of money, and to most people listening, it's an awful lot of money to save $180,000. But we have to remember this is a $140 million project, and how that comes into play. And when they find problems, which we don't know if they will or they won't, but when they find problems, they're rarely $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 problems. They tend to be pricey problems. And although you've got contingency built in, I don't know whoever would sit around and saying, we've got plenty of contingency, we're not going to worry. So basically that's where we are. That's when things should happen. They should see activity. Our community should see activity next week and next month, at least the sports complex, and the schools will see activity this spring in the way of POR and schematics, as will you.
Great, thank you. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity to get educators and citizens involved
Yes.
with the different designs, and obviously, as you heard here today, we have a number of citizens that are interested in volunteering their time and helping out with this, so it's a great opportunity and something Dr. Jama is going to have to kind of fit these together here. Questions, board?
No, not at this time.
No questions? So, great, thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the
Thanks,
10 or
Joe.
15 minutes you gave me to make the presentation. And I thought, well, you must know what you're doing when you hired me, so
Great, thanks, Mr. Rigda.
thank you. You're very welcome.